KSVY Sonoma.
You're listening to Body Talk, Healthy Living Sonoma Style. I'm Heather Morgan, Nutrition and Healthy Living Coach, and I invite you to stay tuned for the next hour. Get educated, get inspired, and become a healthier you. Hello, Sonoma. I'm Heather Morgan, Nutrition and Healthy Living Coach, and it's Tuesday at 2. Yep, it's time for my show, Body Talk, and I'm glad that you're listening in today. We have a great show and a great guest lined up. Sam Shay is going to be calling us here in just a few minutes, and it's a pretty interesting and unique topic. We are going to be talking today about video game addiction for this first part of the hour. And it's a very, very interesting topic. Sam Shay is a chiropractor, functional neurologist, and yes, he's a former video game addict, believe it or not. So this will be very interesting. His story is a pretty amazing one, and I just want to let everybody know you can learn more about his story and more about him. Video game addiction is a serious problem, up and coming problem here in the United States. And, you know, being the mom of a teenage boy myself who loves video games, it's something that does concern me. And then when I started to really learn about Sam Shay's story, I thought, wow, this is something that people really need to hear about. Dr. Sam, thanks so much.
Here in New Zealand, actually.
Okay, so you're in New Zealand.
I don't know how it sounds on your end.
It sounds great, actually, and you're in New Zealand, so I wanted to make that correction. That's awesome. You know, you don't have the accent, Dr. Sam.
Because I was actually born in Massachusetts, and I've moved to New Zealand only just over 5 years ago.
Gotcha. Okay, that would explain it, but you don't have the Massachusetts accent either.
The suburb that I grew up in, on a clear day, you could see the bubble. So I was insulated from the Bostonian accent.
You know, I'd really like to just jump right in on your story. We obviously, Takeshi and I talked a little bit about the topic for today, video game addiction, and the fact that you are not only an expert, but you also are a former video game addict. And I'd love to just hear a little bit more about your story and what brought you along this path.
Sure. Like with essentially all addictions, the addictive cycle begins with trying to avoid a stressful internal mind state. And for me, it began when I was 6 years old, when my parents went through a very nasty divorce.
Okay.
And the stress of that divorce was so bad, one of my sisters went to the hospital with a bleeding stress ulcer.
Oh, no.
And, you know, we all dealt with it in our different ways. I did it by sitting in front of the television, and then that morphed very quickly into video games, and then a sugar addiction on the side.
Sure.
But for over 20 years, actually over 25 years, I had a video game addiction. And what it was is a way to cope, to numb out to all the stress that was going on in my mind, that then led to stressful sensations in my body, and then I would try to numb out by reaching for video games. And it wasn't just the divorce. I mean, later on, it came from being bullied mercilessly at school, to feeling socially isolated, to the awkwardness of puberty and not knowing what to do around girls, and just video games became my default to deal with any old stressor, any current stressor, or any projected fear about the future. It just became the go-to crutch to numb out.
Sure, kind of the escape.
Correct. And what I noticed in dealing with my addiction, but also treating addicts in the clinic, whether they were addicted to food or alcohol or cigarettes or other things, I noticed the common pattern amongst all addicts, which was this pattern of it starts with believing stressful thoughts, whether it's about the past, the present, or the future, then having this, you know, kind of emotional, physical response in the body, and not being able to cope or handle that, and so they reach for some sort of anesthesia. And the vice of choice for me, my anesthesia of choice, was video games, but for other people it could be smoking, drinking,
sugar,
food, sugar, chocolate, or drugs, gossiping. It could be anything.
Shopping.
And shopping, spending money. And, video game addiction is truly just a subset of screen addiction,
right.
which includes the subsets of, which is a giant umbrella of TV, Facebook, social media in general, video games, iPhones, iPads, smartphones, consoles, Tetris, solitaire on the computer. It's a subset, but it's in some ways a unique subset of screen addiction, at least compared to TV, because video games is a directly engaging interaction with the screen as opposed to a passive consumption like TV.
Right.
Social media is also more interactive than television, but video games is again different from social media interaction because there can be social components of video games, but then there's plenty of games that have no social components. So
right.
Video game addiction as a whole is extremely complex because it's like you've got the difference between online and offline. And then if it's online, is it online solo? Is it online group? Is it online role-playing? Is it online shooter? Is it online sandbox games where you build your own thing like Minecraft? If it's offline, is it console? But even then, like the consoles like PlayStation, they can have an online component too. Is it portable? Is it not portable? Does it require a Wi-Fi connection?
Mm-hmm.
And most insidious of all is that it is so socially accepted,
right,
from 2-year-olds up to 80-year-olds,
yes,
that everyone is now a dealer. If you've got any piece of technology on you, you're officially a dealer to someone who's an addict to video games.
Absolutely. And,
so,
as a side note, many people, many people, and I would almost even say most, are they themselves screen addicted and do not know it.
Yeah, and that's the real issue is that how do you measure
mm-hmm.
if you have a problem? Now, to use the word addict is a very strong word.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I do my research on video game addiction, I listen to podcasts on people who've covered it. I listen to academics, and there's a lot of, how do we put this diplomatically, defensiveness.
Yeah, sure.
And kind of almost a animosity towards the term addiction mm-hmm. when it's applied to video games, and it's usually followed by, "Oh, I'm not addicted, ha ha ha," and there's a lot of kind of nervous laughter that follows mm-hmm. it, mm-hmm. especially with kind of the jock podcast radio people that
sure.
take some quizzes and then share their results online, and
yeah,
or they love it. They say, "Oh, great, I'm addicted." They're very happy about it or proud of it for some reason. So
sure.
the criteria that a lot of people have set have been based off of, the American Psychology Association's 9 criteria for internet gaming disorder. And it can sound pretty academic, mm-hmm. their criteria, and I can briefly list it if you want, but I've come up with an easier way to check if there is a problem, if there might be someone who's a heavy gamer or a binge gamer, a very quick checklist to see for our audience to see
awesome.
if they know someone, maybe themselves, maybe their kids or family or relative or friend that might have an issue.
Great.
Would that be of interest?
Yes, that would be fabulous. Do you want to go ahead and read that?
Sure. Well, the APA, the American Psychology Association's criteria is, one is preoccupation, meaning do you mentally preoccupy your mind with gaming during the day? Do you have intrusive thoughts about video gaming during the course of a regular day?
Interesting.
Do you spend a lot of time thinking about it? Do you spend a lot of time doing it? The other criteria is withdrawal, meaning that if you try to pull away from games or if it's taken away from you, or if you notice a child that has games taken away, they start throwing tantrums and fits or give you the cold shoulder or whatnot, that's what I did to my mother, my family, because my sister performed what I deemed a modemectomy, where she removed the modem back in '96. Now, this was dial-up, and I was addicted to an online game called Medivia, which was actually an ASCII-based game, ASCII, and that's just a text-based role-playing game. There was no graphics except the characters you see on your keyboard.
Okay.
It was very, very low tech.
Sure.
And she performed a modemectomy. Now, back in '96, there was no Ethernet, there was no Wi-Fi, there was no gaming cafes, there was no mobile devices, really, and the Internet was very fledgling at that point.
Sure.
Napster hadn't even come out yet.
Right.
So when you had a modemectomy, you don't even have a license to drive to go over to your friend's house to play games. It's done. It's cut off. So I was left to playing just the computer games like Civilization or my console games.
Right.
So I had the withdrawal symptoms. I really punished my family by being very sullen and upset at them. And the third criteria is tolerance, meaning do you need more and more thrilling games, more stronger equipment, stronger doses,
Good point.
faster gameplay.
Right.
The fourth criteria is the inability to stop. So if I've tried to quit many times in the past until I permanently was able to quit, and it was just I always went back, especially when there was a new stress that came up.
Oh, sure. Okay.
The fifth one is giving up other activities. So it even got so bad for me that I would be in high school and I would finish school, do some sports after school, and then come home and play video games. It was so bad that I felt like I realized I was neglecting my dog. And I was more interested in video games and dealing with school than properly taking care of my dog. So I actually gave away my golden retriever because I thought he deserved better.
Sure.
And I knew I couldn't give him the life he deserved because of everything that was going on. And I gave up. I missed out on family activities. I'm sure you've had the experience of seeing a gamer just lock themselves in the room during a summer vacation or a weekend, maybe to emerge to eat quickly, only to go back to play some more.
Absolutely, no doubt about it. We have a teenage son who loves gaming as well, and so this is all very, very interesting. For sure.
The sixth one is continuing despite problems, like with musculoskeletal problems, like whether it's carpal tunnel or neck strain or eye problems.
Right.
But other problems include sleep deprivation, skipping meals, even skipping going to the bathroom.
Sure.
Missing water, missing, damaging one's education or occupation. All sorts of stuff that can be, there are problems that are very real and tangible, but continuing to game despite the problems.
For sure.
Then the seventh one is deception and covering up. So lying. What I did was that I would intentionally, part of me also had a massive sleeping problem, so I'd wake up at 3 most nights anyway. But then once I started doing the online gaming, I would intentionally wake up at 3, put a towel under the crack of the door, and game late at night, because in the online world, fewer people are online, so there's more opportunity to, attack monsters and gain more experience unencumbered by other competitors.
Sure.
So I would lie about my sleeping habits. I would lie about the homework, if I was doing homework or not. I was actually just playing video games. And then, just another form of deception was pretending to have a conversation with people at the dinner table, but in my mind I was, trying to hurry up the conversation so I can get out and play some more.
Wow. And now, during this time, were you involved in anything else outside of the house? Were you doing any sports? Were you...
It depends on the genre. I mean, it depends on the time of my life, because I basically played video games from age 8 to age 33. So
Okay,
there's a
gotcha.
lot. There's a lot there, and this is why I really empathize with very young children who play games, as well as preteens, teens, and adults, and also with parents, because I know what it's like to be a child who is at the angry end of this video game addiction tension with my own parents. So I can understand what parents may be give them the perspective of what it's like from the kid's angle.
Sure.
Of why is this behavior happening, particularly in retrospect 25 years later.
Of course.
So I did have a whole slew of activities I was doing, but the pattern was I got stressed out for whatever reason, remembering an old stressor, dealing with a new one, or projecting fear into the future.
Okay.
I couldn't handle the emotional, physical response, and I needed to numb out.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so whatever was happening, if that happens, video games became the default.
Gotcha. Makes total sense. Mm-hmm.
And in fact, that's the 8th criteria, which for the APA is escaping adverse moods. Which means, to me, I'll come back, I'll just explain that. And the 9th one is risking and losing relationships opportunities. I mean, this is when, you lose educational or occupational or relationship. You just basically hurt your life from an addiction.
Right, of course.
And to me, this 9 criteria list, my criticism of it is that 8 of the 9 things are actually symptoms of the addiction, but the root cause is that 8th one, escaping adverse moods.
Okay, right.
And that is the root of the addictive process. And so I firmly believe, people have their escape mechanisms. Now, to call it an addiction in capital letters can be very harsh.
Sure.
But what's important is for people to realize, what is my vice of choice to numb out from a stressful thought? Chocolate, video games, food, Facebook, or whatever.
Right, right.
Now, going back to, that's that big complicated list by the APA.
Right.
I looked at that list, and I'm like, that's not easy to, that can be easy for some, but it's not a quick checklist. Particularly for video games.
Right, right.
So what I did is I wanted a definition of heavy gaming, and I wanted a definition of binge gaming, and I wanted some sort of number measuring stick.
Great.
So what I did is I went to the Center for Disease Control's definition of heavy drinking.
Nice.
And it's right there on their website.
Wow.
And according to the CDC, heavy drinking for a male is over 14 drinks a week.
Okay.
Now, they didn't say alcoholic. They said heavy drinking.
Right, right, right. Interesting.
So what I did is I replaced the term standard drink with standard hour of gaming.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So if you or someone that's playing over 14 hours of video games a week, that's more than 2 hours on average a day. They are, by my definition, a heavy gamer.
Sure, makes sense.
Then I wanted a definition of binge gaming, so I just scrolled up a little bit on the same webpage on alcoholism on the CDC website, and the definition of binge drinking by the CDC is for a male is over 4 drinks within a 2-hour period.
Oh, okay.
So the way that I translated that into video binge gaming is over 4 hours straight of gaming without at least a 2-hour continuous break to quote detox.
Right, right. Okay, yeah, that's awesome.
So if someone games over 4 hours straight, or if they game for 3, have a break for 1 hour, and game for 2 more, that's still binge gaming because they didn't have a 2-hour break.
Right, right, absolutely. So when you
and the third, sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead. I'll save my question.
Sure. The third quick checklist, aside from over 14 hours a week for heavy gaming, 4 or more hours of a 2-hour continuous break for binge gaming. The third one is, have you or has your friend or relative ever gamed more hours than they slept at least once within the last month?
Ooh.
So if they video gamed for 7 hours and slept 6, that's a problem.
That is a problem.
And if they, well, I slept for 10 hours, yeah, but you gamed for 11.
Right.
It's checkmate, no matter how you slice it. If they gamed for only 5 but slept for only 4, it's a problem. No matter what number you pick for sleep, if the hours of gaming are more than they slept at least once in the past month, that's a red flag.
For sure.
So that's the 3 measurable ways for people to identify there might be a video game problem.
Okay, great. Very helpful. Okay, well, that was so far incredibly enlightening. We're talking with Dr. Sam Shay in New Zealand, and he's a video game addict, I guess you'd say, expert. And can we talk just a little bit quickly, Dr. Shay, before we go into the next the next question? But can we just back up just a little bit and talk about you as a doctor? And I didn't get a chance to properly introduce you, but you are a functional neurologist. So this is why this is really up your alley, I guess, so to speak. Correct? As a chiropractor.
I'm a chiropractor. I'm a functional neurologist and also an acupuncturist. And what I've done is looked at not only my own experience but treating others in the clinic. And what I found is that there's a definite correlation with addictive tendencies and for example, and like adrenal fatigue, because their ability to cope with stress, like that phase where they're believing a stressful thought, then they have that emotional physical response.
Yes.
If they can't cope
with that
because their internal stress hormone system is so fragile, then they're more at risk to use. And then also, if they're for neurology, like if their reward pathways are vulnerable, then they've got a vulnerability to having stressful thoughts. They can't cope because their normal reward systems aren't functioning, and they just need to have something to feel alive and feel like they've got some sort of positive experience in life, which is basically a form of escapism.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Very, very good. And let's see, you touched on something a second ago that I wanted to talk about a little bit more, if this goes along with what you'd like to talk about today. But you did mention adrenals, and some people would find that to be a little surprising that actually through addiction, but even video game addiction, that this actually would affect our stress glands, the adrenal glands, and have a physiological effect in that way.
Yeah, if people understand how the eye is wired, then they'll understand why people's stress systems burn out through playing excessive video games, particularly violent and super intense video games. So the human eye is wired to look for danger when there's a sudden movement, sudden change of color, a sudden change in light density. So like, basically, if we're hunter-gatherers and there's a flash of orange in the corner of our eye, or we see a shadow quickly move, that's a change in light density, light to dark really quickly, or the orange in the corner of our eye, or the sudden movement, automatically our eye targets to that, and automatically our stress response system fires. Before our brain even has a conscious awareness of what it was, our stress response system, which is mediated by the sympathetic nervous system, or the stress, flight or flight side of the nervous system, and then also the adrenal glands, kicks on.
Okay, makes sense.
So we don't have a choice. It's hardwired into the way the eye is wired. So when we for example, if people are driving and they see police lights, you can't help but look at them. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's moving. It's a change in color, the red and the blue, and the light is changing density because the light's coming towards you, then spinning away, then towards you, and spinning away. You have to stare at it.
No, it's a really good point.
So with video games, say?
No, I was just saying it's a really good point that you're bringing up, and being that is the case, then that just brings on a whole new level of seriousness to this addiction, because now we're talking about, because, and maybe you can speak to this, but, when our adrenal glands do become overstressed, or stress hormones become overstressed, it affects a whole cascade of bodily functions that can really, take our health down. So now you're talking about somebody who's trying to escape emotional pain or whatever, facing this addiction, dealing with this addiction, and now they've got the biochemical and the physiological breakdown as well due to the stress response.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if your adrenals break down for whatever reason, it was stress or the visual stress and intensity of any, video games in particular, because of the wiring of the eye. And you can see this in kids and adults who play a lot of video games. Like after the long session, they're like, there's no motivation. They're almost like a zombie.
Yeah, they're drained.
That's my experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And lack of focus. And when the adrenal glands there's two stages. If they're ramped up, if they're really hyper excitable, then they're just kind of ADD and can't really focus and concentrate. Or if they're exhausted, there's just no energy there. And it's all it's all just really, really difficult to get anything done, and then reaching again for whatever was exciting and stimulating, but that further burns out the adrenal glands. And so what can happen is fatigue, lack of focus, adrenal glands also, if you're under stress, you shut down your anabolic hormones. Now, anabolic means building up. So these are like your sex hormones, testosterone, progesterone.
Right.
So I'm just about to publish an article on this, but it's called Digital Castration: Why Violent Video Games Are Neutering a Generation of Men.
Wow, absolutely.
And I think it's a big. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen this, but I've had the experience. Like when I was in the dorms, I would walk by the dorms and I'd see guys playing video games, and then the girls were sitting, in the dorm room, kind of looking at the guys playing the game and looking at each other, looking like, what the hell? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. What is going on? And you see the guys just totally absorbed in the games, and it's like there's a hormonal consequence to that, because your body, your adrenal glands, you have a choice. You either make sex hormones or you make stress hormones.
That's exactly right.
And so if you're constantly
under stress, no, that's absolutely right. When you're under stress, the body's going to shut down the normal functions and deal with the stressor. Yeah,
and even if the stressor is just simply, it's only a perceived threat, like playing a violent video game or something, your body interprets that the same way as if a real thing was coming at you.
That's exactly right. Yeah, very good information, Dr. Shay. This is
thank you.
This is information that I think it's not widely known, and it's one of those things where I think this is epidemic. It's there, it's all around us, but people just really aren't aware. And bringing to light the symptoms, the and then of course how it's affecting so many of us. I think this is really, really important, and the work that you're doing is very, very important.
Thank you. And there's also collateral damage along with the video games. What happens is that if you are an excessive gamer, you don't want to get up to do things like eat real food.
Right.
So you've got these you've got a multi-billion-dollar 5-hour energy drink, and now even the soda companies are making gamer-specific sodas.
Oh.
And I'm not kidding. You can look on, like, I forget which company, if it's Coke or Pepsi, they have, like, now on the side of it's like for dad, for mom, friend, and there's even one that says gamer.
You have got to be kidding me. Oh, I can't believe that.
So there's an entire junk food industry around video games. Now, you've got the collateral damage of sugar, or worse, artificial sugar, like aspartame and whatnot. You've got junk food. You've got sleep deprivation. You've got excessive stimulation. Not only sleep deprivation, but the really strong bright lights really late at night really screws up the circadian rhythms.
Really does.
And you've got the social. A lot of gamers will claim, I'm being social, I'm playing with my friend. Yeah, that's technically true, but I don't know if you've ever seen many gamers play with their friends, and there's a lot of verbal abuse and humiliation thrown around.
Yeah, there definitely can be. Sure, absolutely. No, that's a very good point. So it's not healthy socialization. It's not replacing the kind of socialization we are hardwired to experience.
Yeah, and there's a lot of verbal abuse. Now, that being said, there's some anthropologists who will point to, and also sports enthusiasts, say, look, verbal abuse is very common amongst other analog social activities like sports. Mm-hmm. And they're right. Mm-hmm. And the difference is that you're actually moving in high-intensity ways to burn off all the stress hormones.
Right.
Whereas if you're video gaming, you're sitting there and stewing in your own adrenaline.
That's very good. Very true.
Do you want me to share some more practical things people can do?
That would be great. We have about 5 minutes left. So yes, for people who are listening and looking for, so how do I start to address this? That would be amazing.
Sure. The first thing is, it's a big topic, and I wrote a free ebook for people which has a lot more detail into it. But the first easiest things for people to do right away is to, one, identify if you think there's a problem. Not necessarily addiction, but is there a problem? And ask yourself, or of yourself and of the people you know that you're concerned about, is there over 14 hours of gaming per week? Is there over 4 hours of binge gaming without at least a 2-hour break in between? Is there any day within the past month that gaming took more time than sleeping on any given night?
That's great.
Or the next thing to do is to remove all video games and video game hardware from the bedroom. There was a study done where the amount of video gaming that happened almost tripled if there was a video game apparatus accessible in the bedroom versus out in the public living room area.
Okay. That's great.
The other thing to, that can be the biggest game changer, especially for kids. Now, a lot of parents may object, well, my kid's going to throw a tantrum. I'm like, yeah, they probably will. And this is where you got to button up and be the parent and do what's best for your kids.
Absolutely.
And it's hard. I know, because I gave a really hard time to my parents for it.
Sure.
When they did it to me. So I sympathize with the parent, but it was the right thing to do for me.
Yeah,
it's not for me to give my parents a hard time, but for them to take it away, to put them away from me.
Of course, and you worked through it, but it was not an easy process, but it's something that has to happen.
Yeah. The other thing that should be done is to really cut off video games by 8 p.m., 7 p.m. even better, so it doesn't disrupt or hyper-excite someone that it can interfere with their sleep. Give yourself a couple hours to come down from video games so you can go to bed ideally before 10 o'clock at night.
Sure.
Otherwise you get into this cycle of sleep deprivation and then inability to handle stress. Then you reach more video games, which creates more sleep deprivation. Then you can't handle stress the next day because you're so tired. You want to play more video games, and it just keeps going and going and going like it did for me.
Sure, the vicious cycle. Great.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that can be done is to just have a digital-free day, or at least cut out 1 day of video games per week. Just 1 day where there's no gaming allowed on this day. And if you want to, in a month's time, make it 2 days. And if you want to, in another month's time, make it 3 days. But just set a line in the sand of just removing one day completely.
That's fabulous. It'd be nice to see a whole family do that.
Yeah, absolutely. There are people that just have a screen-free day.
Yes.
Which it sounds like a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Great.
The other things that can be done is similar to what my sister did, which was a modemectomy, which is take away the devices, the modem, the Wi-Fi. Now, it's a lot harder today to do that because, people who are really into gaming, there's many ways to game, clandestinely, ride on other people's Wi-Fis, get a portable Wi-Fi generator, do all sorts of sneaky things. So that can be a bit difficult, but it's still possible.
So when you
there's even like software that blocks. I recommend a free app called Timeout, which can interrupt, create breaks on your computer, or another great one's called Rescue Time that can set some focus blocks of time where you can't connect to the internet for a specific period of time, things like that. But the most important thing, I feel, is to really recognize, is there an issue, and then to ask for help and to get educated. And that's, because obviously, it's hard to encapsulate the complexity of, over gaming and video game addiction in, just a 40-minute soundbite.
Yes, of course.
But
Oh no, it's true. But we're so grateful that you've been with us today, and there's so much more that we could talk about, and we'd love to have you, back on at another time. I'm sure we can arrange that. But for now, I just want to make sure that our listeners know how to reach you, via the internet, your website, and you mentioned that recognize there's a problem and then get help. So I want to make sure that people know how to reach out to you so that they can take advantage of all the great resources that you do have. And then obviously in the event that they have questions, they can reach out. So what's the best way for our listeners to follow you and reach you?
Sure. Well, for U.S. listeners, they can just take their cell phones and text to the number 33444. It's 33444, and text the word video games, all one word, just video games, no spaces or dashes, and they'll get a text back to enter their email, and they'll automatically be emailed my free ebook called 7 Ways to Game Less, How to Unplug and Live More.
Love it.
For people that want to go directly to the website, they can go to www.gamelesslivemore.com. It's gamelesslivemore.com. And in the ebook, people can read it, and then in the ebook, I have a link. If any of your listeners want a free session with me about video game issues, video game addiction, there's a link to a survey to fill out for a free session with me. And I'd love to be able to help any of your listeners, whether they're parents or family members or friends, someone that they think is a video game issue.
Dr. Sam, sadly, we have to move on. The next show is going to be starting, and I'm so sorry to cut you off. But we did get the 33444 by text. Video game, and then they can also reach you online.
Video games.
Yes.
Yeah.
The word video games. Perfect. Well, thank you again for joining us today. Sadly, we have to go, but we will pick back up with this, and I'll make sure all of your information goes on our Facebook page.
Okay. Thank you so much, Heather.
Thank you, Dr. Shay. Appreciate it. Take care.
Okay. Bye. Bye.